right, it is time for the Monthly 10, our monthly segment where we do a top 10 list challenging each other on to make lists. Last month, I went and did a list about the best years ending divisible by 5. It was weird, and I wound up doing a Gundam thing with it. But then I challenged you, Sean Chapman, because it's your turn this month, and it is February. It is the month of love. Valentine's Day is coming up, and I wanted you to rank the 10 best anime ships that you could come up with, basically, to tell us basically your idea of romance through anime characters you want to make partner up.
Yeah, so I wrote this down as like top 10 best, most unexpected or unusual anime ships is kind of how I've interpreted this. In order to make the list both like feasible and I think like entertaining, I've only really chosen characters from either really popular anime or from anime that we have done a podcast on. So anything we have ever done for Japanimation Station or Weekly Suit Gundam, obviously all the Gundam stuff. And then again, anything that's just like so popular that I could expect viewers to or listeners to know it, or for Jonathan, you to know it. I've done that. So I didn't want to, just like pick two incredibly obscure Naruto characters and do a weird Naruto one because only a sliver of people would understand. So if you are a listener of Japanimation Station, you will know every character on this list. The other thing I encountered when I started making it was I just was having a hard time putting this together without like visualizing and engaging with the ship in some way. Like I can't just put together a list of two names with an X in the middle and just be like, well, that's it. You have to express it. It has to be pure. So Jonathan, I've gone the extra mile and I have written a snippet for each of these ships of a potential /fic. So I've written just not like what the full thing would be, but if you were to do a piece of fan fiction featuring these ships, I've written a little bit. Some of them are fairly short. Some of them ended up being a lot longer than I originally expected, which made this a lot longer to put together than I originally expected.
For those not a host of this podcast, Sean has been telling me for weeks that he needs a little more time on this because he wants to give it a little extra juice. And I didn't know what that meant, and now I know what it means, and I've never been happier to be hosting a podcast with you. I want to hear these, Sean.
All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you the number. I'm going to read my piece of /fic, and then for people who don't get it, I will then tell you exactly what the ship is. Everyone should know what the ship is by the time we get to the end of the /fic. But I thought it would be funnier to read it and have the surprise of what the fic is pop up in it. I will also say the ordering of these from 10 to number 1 are just like completely irrelevant. Like I couldn't figure out how you rank one of the next to the other. So it's more or less a random order. I did put my number 1, I think, is my funniest one. But the rest of these are just sort of like, I just kind of slapped them together.
Sounds good.
So this is my number 10 best, most unexpected anime ship. Toko clicked her tongue in frustration. Something had gone wrong with the summoning. She could feel that the bridge between her and the servant through which mana should be flowing freely was stymied like a river clogged with trash. As the smoke cleared, she saw the imposing figure standing there clad in red armor. She looked observantly up and down his lean, muscled, dark-skinned body. She had an idea. I seem to have a knack for getting unusual masters, his sharp voice pierced through the silence. Now that Toko could get a clear look at his face, there was something in it she almost recognized, a half-faded memory of a doll she had made years ago. Perhaps that connection was the true catalyst for this summoning, as he was clearly no ordinary heroic spirit. Strange, you seem to be a skilled mage, but I don't feel much mana from you. Yes, something has blocked our connection, Toko answered with a drag from her cigarette. But that shouldn't be a problem for long. Oh? You have some means of repairing it? Oh no, we just have to make a different kind of connection. You do, of course, know the traditional way two mages can share mana. A puzzled look hung over his expression for a moment before the sudden realization hit. His eyes opened wide, and she thought she could see a blush rising in his cheeks. How surprisingly naive, she thought. This would be fun.
So that is, can I just say it?
Yes.
I know it. That is Toko Aozaki, an archer from Fate Stay Night, doing the sex scene from the Unlimited Blade Works route.
Yes, that is more or less what it is. Yes, so it is Toko has summoned Archer / Emiya Shiro's heroic spirit form from Fate Stay Night. Their connection has been broken in some way, and so in order to repair it and share mana, they have to have sex a la what Shiro has to do with Saber in the adults version of the original Fate Stay Night.
Well, I love it. I love it.
All right, that's my number 10. All right, moving on to my number 9. This one got a little bit long when I started typing it up. This one might be one of the most obscure ones. So I think it might take a little bit for some people before they realize who the second character is in this one. So this is my number 9 most unexpected or unusual anime ship. After an exhausting day, Yamanaka Sawako, high school teacher at Sakuragaoku High School and advisor to the Light Music Club, slumped over the counter at the bar inside. The school had asked Sawako to attend a local professional development conference, and despite her best efforts, she couldn't get out of it. Her mind drifted to the Light Music Club room and all the delicious sweets that lay within. A long day, wasn't it? Huh? Sawako's mind was brought back to earth by the melodious voice, and she rotated her head around the counter to face her new companion. She saw a composed woman with a short bob wearing a tan suit and soft, compassionate expression. It was as though the image of the ideal teacher she strove to be was lifted from Sawako's mind and deposited on the bar stool next to her. With a snap, Sawako sat up and quickly adjusted her hair and glasses. She felt compelled to appear her best before this stranger. I saw you at some of the workshops at the conference and was meaning to have a chat. I'm Tsukumo Nanase. By the way, I teach math at Icho High School. The exhaustion of the long, tedious workshops and lectures of the conference was purged from Sawako's body as she talked with Tsukumo-sensei through the night. They had a lot in common. Both were called Chan by their students, though Sawako felt the students likely had more respect in Nana-chan-sensei than Sawa-chan-sensei. And they both were in charge of a strange group of students in a strange club. But Sawako was fascinated to hear about the Far East Magic Napping Society of Summer that Tsukumo-sensei was the advisor for. Not because of the bizarre and enigmatic nature of the club itself, but in the way she knew that Tsukumo-sensei was able to guide students so much more difficult than the girls of after-school tea time. Nanase looked down at her watch. Oh my, look at the time. We really should stop here. It's been a true pleasure, Yamanaka-sensei. Nanase stood up and collected her things, but Sawako felt a dread rising within herself. Her idol, the thing she had inspired to be, was there before her very eyes. How could she let it stop here? Wait! She called out at a volume that surprised even her. Nanase stopped and turned. Sawako thought that in that moment she caught a glimpse in Tsukumo-sensei's eyes, a hint of something deeper than she had shown before. This flash of insight spurred Sawako on more. I would really like to talk some more, that is, if you would like to. Oh, Nanase feigned surprise. I suppose that would be lovely, but we can't stay here any longer. Would you like to come back to my hotel room with me? I could make you some tea. That glint in the eye flashed in Sawako's mind. A part of her knew what it intimated, but she didn't care. She wanted, needed to know more. Yes, please, I think I'd really like that.
So this is Sawa-chan Sensei from K-On!
Yes.
And Nanase-sensei from Love, Chunibyo, and Other Delusions?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Very good. Yes, so it is Nana-chan Sensei x Sawa-chan Sensei. I don't know how I ended up at that one. I think I had the idea of wanted Sawako to be in one of them, but I couldn't think of who else to do. But I liked the idea of these two teachers from two KyoAni shows. Sawa-chan, who is very, endearing, but very ineffectual as a teacher, and then Nana-chan, who is very endearing, but also is like the ultimate teacher who can get her kids to do whatever the fuck she wants. And I thought that would be a good combination.
I could see someone else having come up with the Archer fanfic / this one is all you, Sean.
Yes.
There's none of these on AO3, I don't think yet, until you post this.
Yes, I will have to finish it. I'll have both an R15 and R18 version, depending on my readers. All right, my number 8, this one, I sort of bent things a little bit, that these characters are originally from video games, but both video games have had anime adaptations. I just felt like I had to have one of these in here. So this is my number 8 top 10 unusual anime ship. Elizabeth reflected on how curious of a place the Velvet Room was, at least from the standards of the humans she had come to know. For them, time and space were fixed concepts, laws, which they obeyed instinctively even if they were utterly ignorant of them. For Elizabeth and the Velvet Room, however, these things were flexible, mutable. It was good for her, because if they weren't, she wouldn't be able to do what she needed to at this moment. She looked over the tall, lean, bespectacled figure dressed all in black who stood before her. He was doing his best to remain composed and focused, but Elizabeth could see the cracks of hesitation and confusion forming on his mask. He was a future guest, one that would suit her needs in this moment. She simply hoped that her little sister Lavenza would forgive the intrusion. I suppose you'd like to know why I've brought you here, Elizabeth stated. He looked at her searchingly from beneath his glasses. Oh, he was a shrewd one, this future guest. I am attending to a guest in my own time, a guest not unlike yourself, but I find myself ignorant of certain human elements to which I would very much like to attend. It is to aid me with these things that I have called you here for a brief spell. He seemed just as confused after her explanation as before it. Elizabeth wondered if this would work. Human elements? He echoed back in a questioning tone. Oh, so he picked those sorts of options, Elizabeth remarked to herself. In brief, my guest is planning to invite me on a Valentine's Day rendezvous, and I wish to be prepared for the romantic and erotic inevitabilities of such an occasion. At this, his mask of aloofness shattered and an expression of utter bafflement consumed his features. Erotic? He echoed. Yes, you see, I have read some of your romantic comedy manga and seen that before engaging in such behavior with the object of one's desire, it is customary to first engage a partner with which you are uninterested with the excuse of practice, I believe it is. I am, of course, prepared for the potential outcome that such practice leads to us forming a powerful bond which overwhelms the original. Practice? He said back in a helpless tone. Oh yes, dear guest of the future. Simply practice. Elizabeth answered directly, flatly, and finally.
Well, that would be Elizabeth from Persona 3 and the protagonist from Persona 5, whatever you want to name him. And Sean, this fanfic wins the Sawashiro Miyuki Award for Peculiar Excellence because I'm imagining it in her voice.
I did spend a lot of time trying to get the Elizabeth voice down. It's a little complicated trying to because I hear it in Japanese in my head of the way the actor sounds, and so trying to get the voice to come out in English took me a little bit. That one took me the longest to write. Until eventually, the thing that made it easy was when I settled on I'm just going to have the Persona 5 protagonist just do the option that questions the key noun from the previous sentence. I'm that made this really easy.
I love it.
All right. So that was my number 8. On to my number 7. Most unusual anime ship. Kobayashi couldn't understand how she found herself in these situations. First was Toru, then Kana, and after that, a veritable deluge of mystic beings from another world dropped into her life. Once upon a time, Kobayashi was just a tired and overworked employee whose only salve in life was an extreme fixation on maids. Now? Well, now she had another visitor from a far-off land. But this one was different from the rest. The woman at her doorstep with porcelain features grabbed the edges of her blue skirt and gave a curtsy with beautiful, mechanical precision. I think Jonathan figured out what it is. We will travel anywhere to meet our client's request. I am the auto memory doll Violet Evergarden at your service. Several weeks passed since Violet came. She had seemingly come from some other world than Toru, but she didn't know how she had arrived here or why. Kobayashi was struck with a feeling she had never felt after first laying eyes on her. At this point, even Kobayashi recognized that she held a love for Toru, but what Violet inspired in her was something different, something fierce and overwhelming. Just a glance of Violet's exquisite form as she went about the household chores she had calmly and insistently taken on for herself was enough to send Kobayashi's heart into such a race she became dizzy. As a result, Kobayashi began distancing herself from Violet bit by bit. Whether it was out of fear or shyness, she did not know. One night, Kobayashi saw light leaking through the crack of the door in Violet's room. Not able to resist, Kobayashi peeked through the crack and saw something that dropped her heart out of her chest. Violet was sitting at her desk with the gloves she always wore laid out on her table. Kobayashi caught a glint of light reflecting off the clockwork metal arms now exposed to the world. At the sight of this, a whimper slipped from Kobayashi's mouth. "Kobayashi-sama, what is it?" Violet calmly asked as she turned to face the door. Kobayashi hesitated for a moment. Was she prepared for this? She had always known there was something more to Violet. Occasionally she spotted the same sullen, isolated expression cross Violet's face as she had seen on Toru so many times before. She knew that there was much left behind in Violet's old world which had left deep scars, and now she could see a glimmer of how deep those scars truly ran. If she stepped through that door, she would finally have to confront these feelings she had been running from for weeks. There would be no turning back. Kobayashi gave a deep sigh. She thought about a wounded dragon on a mountain and a drunk office worker laughing next to her. "I'm sorry, Toru." Kobayashi stepped through the door with an expression of intense vitality that she had never once worn in her life before.
Well, that is obviously Violet Evergarden and Miss Kobayashi from Miss Kobayashi's Dragon Maid.
Yep.
And what number was that?
7.
Jesus Christ, what are the next 6? Oh my god. Okay, well,
Again,
Yeah.
I didn't pay much attention to the ordering, but yes, that is my number 7. All right.
Well, there we go. Let's
All right, my number
move
6,
on.
this also is the first one I wrote, so this is by far the shortest, because as I started doing things, they got longer and longer. But here's my number 6. Jessie sighed deeply. She couldn't understand why she had come to this place. She should have moved on after failing to capture Pikachu again. But she found something that drew her here again, something she couldn't share with James or Meowth. Would you like some milk with those cookies? Ash's mother, Delia, gently asked as she entered the room. Demurely, Jessie replied, "No, that's all right." She felt a soft pressure on her thigh. She looked up and saw Delia sitting next to her, looking at her with an inscrutable gaze. "Are you sure?" she asked softly.
Well, that is Jessie from Pokemon Team Rocket and Delia, Ash Ketchum's mother. But here's the thing, Sean. I assume had you written more of this fanfic and gotten into the actual thing, Mr. Mime would have entered the threesome because Mr. Mime does live with Delia and presumably they fuck. So this is a 3-way fanfic, I assume, right?
Yes. Well, in my mind, Delia is an absolute sexual fiend. Like that was like the premise behind it, right? And Jessie, because this is one where I feel like normally you'd have Jessie be the top in the ship, but this is Delia is definitely the top. It's Ash's mom ex Jessie is how I have written it. For people who don't know ships, you always put the top or dominant partner as the first name in the ship. So yeah, there's that. All right.
You've thought about this a lot.
I had to put a lot of thought into it if I was going to write all the shit. All right, number 5. This is another pretty long one. This one is one of my. This was one of my favorite ones to write. Hitori Goto, Bochi, to her friends, sat in the corner of the club. How did she find herself in these situations over and over again? The Kesoku band was participating in a rehearsal for a show at the Starry Live House, but Bochi hadn't realized just how many other bands would be participating. Her mind was overloaded with the anxiety of meeting strangers. After all, she could barely handle meeting with people she knew. "Oya, oya, what are you doing over there? Are you part of the decorations?" A voice both soft and powerful poked at Bochi. Her whole body contorted in a fit at the realization of being observed. She jerked her torso around to catch a glimpse of her interrogator and saw something that stopped her heart. It was a girl, maybe a few years older than her, with long flowing black hair and a distinctive pair of red-framed glasses. Bochi was struck not only by the beauty of this stranger, but more so by the enigmatic, piercing gaze that lurked behind those red frames. In an instant, Bochi felt that she was exposed, naked, before this person that stood imposingly before her. "Ha ha ha," her laugh rang out. "I know, you're that guitar player, right? The one people were calling Bochi? I can see why." The stranger almost doubled over in a fit of laughter. The stranger lifted up her glasses and wiped at the tears of laughter forming at the corners of her eyes. Sorry, it's just... Oh, you're so much fun. I'm Asuka, by the way. Tanaka Asuka." Asuka reached out and pulled Bochi's limp body to a standing position. Bochi's soul, which had begun leaking from her ears, snapped back into her body. In a moment of brief lucidity, Bochi saw something that piqued her curiosity. Tanaka-san, what's that?" Bochi stumbled through as she shakingly pointed at the silver instrument tucked below Asuka's arm. "Oh, this? This is euphonium." After the performance, Bochi found herself alone, breathing in the night air, trying to calm her shot nerves. Suddenly her vision went black. "Guess who?" lilted a now familiar voice. "Please, Tanaka-san, that's not funny." "Oh, come on, you can just call me Asuka. You know, Bochi, there aren't many people in this world as much fun to tease as you." Bochi felt there was a particular person lurking behind Asuka's words, but she was afraid to ask. At the concert, Asuka's performance had captivated her. It was an unusual thing, a euphonium playing alongside a rock band, but somehow every note, every breath that Asuka had made seemed perfect. Bochi's mind wandered at the recollection of the performance. The sound of the shining silver euphonium and the sight of Asuka's glamorous form danced in her mind. Hey, I know something fun we can do." Asuka's words brought Bochi back to reality. "Huh? What's that?" "Close your eyes and count to 10. Bochi was frightened at the suggestion, but felt powerless to resist. She did as she was told and closed her eyes while slowly counting to 10. With her eyes closed, every sound that Asuka made, her soft breathing, the rustling of her clothes, was amplified. Was she getting closer? By the count of 4, a powerful floral aroma washed over her. Was this Asuka's scent? And then at the count of 2, Bochi suddenly felt a soft, warm pressure on her lips. Her initial confusion gave way to an explosion of realization. Her eyes shot open, What? She stammered, unable to get the words out. She saw Asuka stand there laughing, and a mysterious smile came over her features. Good night, Bochi. I'll see you around. Asuka disappeared into the cool night, leaving Bochi there steaming and stuttering in the street.
Well, that one speaks for itself. It's Bochi from Bochi the Rock and Asuka Senpai from Sound Euphonium.
Yes.
And I do think that is exactly how it would go down. It made me a little uncomfortable, but that is exactly how it would go down.
Yeah, this is the one I like. Now that I read through the whole thing, I just wrote an entire. I didn't do an excerpt. That's just the whole thing.
No, that's the whole fanfic. That's chapter 1.
Yes.
You would in a week or two you would post chapter 2 where they get more hot and heavy. But that is chapter 1 to completion.
Yeah, that was definitely the one that I enjoyed writing the most. Just I got weirdly into it. I don't know why. All right, my number 4, top 10 most unusual anime ship. This is also, you'll see, this is stylistically very different. Have you ever wondered what would happen if the world's most temperamental, arrogant, obnoxious, and downright annoying girl, who also happened to somehow have the power to reshape the world, became obsessed with romance light novels? Well, probably not. It would be an oddly specific thing to spend your limited time on Earth daydreaming about. But trust me, sometimes it would do you good to ponder the impossible, if only to prepare yourself should it happen. For example, take the distressing, disturbing, and if I'm totally honest, strangely arousing sight unfolding before my eyes. Please stop. Before you get too excited, please know that moaning isn't coming from some beautiful girl like Asahina-san, but instead the plain-faced and forgettable club president of our school's computer science club, with whom our SOS brigade has had a few run-ins. I won't. The voice came back as a cold whisper, one that you struggled to hear, but that also sent a shiver down your spine so intense it rode back up and shook your skull. The often timid and demure, according to that idiot Taniguchi, and alien and inscrutable, according to me, Nagato Yuki, was leaning over the computer science club president who happened to be strapped to a school desk. I'm sure Yuki was only acting this way because Haruhi's powers had gone haywire again, but don't you think feeding him chocolate-covered strawberries is a bit much? Yuki's free hand touched the computer science club president's cheek and slowly started to descend. Oh, I can't bear to watch. And yet...
Well, that one is obviously Nagato Yuki and the Computer Science Club president from The Melancholy of Suzumiya Haruhi. And I assume that you did the research and found that the Computer Science Club president does not have a name anywhere in the text.
I didn't actually bother to look it up. I don't think he does. I think they always just refer to him as Buchan.
And that is in the voice of the original light novels, very obviously from the perspective of Kyon.
Yes, who, in my mind, is strapped to a chair and cannot move and is being forced to look at this, and it is causing him to confront a lot of things about himself. The thing that was funny about this one is I had this idea early on. I don't know, because I wanted to do a Haruhi one, but you can't do any of the main characters of Haruhi together because all the ships have existed for a million years. And for whatever reason, I was thinking about the Day of Sagittarius episode where Yuki gets really into the computer stuff. I thought, that would be fun. And originally I was writing it in like a more normal fan-fiction-y kind of style like the other ones, but I couldn't do it. And I realized you can't write Haruhi stuff if it's not from Kyon's POV. So then I put Kyon in there and strapped him to a chair.
Naturally, as one does.
All right, so let's move on to my number 3. I think you'll like this one, Jonathan. This is a short one, but a sweet one. Jigen flexed against the cold metal handcuffs that bit into his wrists. This one be hard for Jigen to get out of on his own. He wondered how long it would take for Lupin to get around to helping this time. He was sure that Lupin was still out there in the city somewhere. He was probably chasing after Fujiko or the treasure or... Oh no, he would be chasing after both. A sharp creak of metal on metal was followed by an echoing thud as someone else stepped into the cell. Jigen felt a reassuring warmth as his hat, which had been taken when he was arrested, was placed roughly back on his head. I was hoping for the grand prize, but I'll take the runner-up for now, a familiarly gruff voice said. If people listening to this don't know, Jonathan is currently doubling over in laughter, I think, at knowing what's happening here. Anyways, the familiar gruff voice said. A smile crept up below the brim of Jigen's hat. Inspector Zenigata, I haven't seen you since... Paris, was it? A flush ran over Zenigata's face. Don't remind me. Although I wasn't the one in handcuffs then. I said don't remind me. Jigen let the silence hang and sat there as he felt Zenigata's confidence fall to fluster. All of a sudden, Jigen felt that he hoped Lupin would take his time.
that is two of my favorite fictional characters, Jigen Daisuke and Zenigata Koichi, having love in prison. And how much do you think there's any actual erotic fanfic about these two middle-aged men?
I can't imagine. I'm sure there's plenty of Jigen Lupin. Obviously, Fujiko would be with any of them. Jigen and Goemon, I can see. Zenigata and Lupin all over the place. But Jigen and Zenigata, no, I can't imagine. I didn't look for it, but I can't imagine it's out there.
Suddenly he hoped Lupin wouldn't get back too soon. That's my number one so far, Sean, but you knew that when you wrote it.
Yep. All right. My number 2, most unusual anime ship. Do you ever feel guilty about this? Cameron wondered aloud as he stared up at the familiar hotel ceiling. No, Bright's voice came back calm and assured. Are you? Cameron paused for a moment as he reflected on the bizarre nature of their relationship that, at this point over so many years, had started to feel natural. They both had loved the same woman, a love that Cameron had fought for and lost, that Bright had fought for and won. I don't know, I just wonder sometimes, what would Mirai do if she learned about us? Ah, you're in one of those moods tonight? Bright responded teasingly. I could call her if you think that would spice things up. Bright, please. Cameron's feeble resistance shattered under the firm pressure of Bright's hand on his shoulder.
So it's Cameron Bloom and Captain Bright Noah, but you didn't have Bright slap him at any point? Erotically?
No, I don't think that they have that kind of relationship. Maybe if I got the full R18 version and got in there would be a slap, but it probably wouldn't be on the face.
I like it.
All right. And then my number 1, most unusual or unexpected anime ship. Chaozu was waiting behind the staging area of the tournament as he had promised. Thinking back on the match, he couldn't believe he had lost. He knew that the Crane Hermit would be furious, and Chaozu knew a terrible fate awaited him, practicing math. While Chaozu contemplated his future with dread, a familiar figure appeared before him, the sun glinting off his bald head. Thanks for waiting, clown boy. It's not like I had much of a choice. Chaozu was torn. On the one hand, he regretted making this bet, that the loser of the match would do whatever the winner wanted. But on the other hand, Chaozu felt an unfamiliar feeling surging within his small chest. He couldn't define it or explain it, but he felt a powerful desire to submit to the whims of his opponent, his rival, Krillin. As Chaozu's heart began thumping at this unexplored thrill, Krillin lifted Chaozu's hat from his head. I was really shocked to see this, you know, Krillin whispered in Chaozu's ear. Sorry. I got to do it for the top of the paragraph. I was really shocked to see this, you know, Krillin whispered in Chaozu's ear as he gently stroked the single hair on Chaozu's otherwise bald head. When I first saw you, I thought you were just like me, but no, you're different, aren't you? Chaozu didn't know how to respond, but simply relented to the physical sensations. Chaozu, let me show you some turtle-style techniques that wouldn't be appropriate for the tournament.
Well, that's Chaozu and Kuririn, aka Krillin from Dragon Ball. I was watching One Piece earlier today, so I was hearing a lot of Tanaka Mayumi, and when you had heard his first line there, Krillin's first line, he was like, hey, clown face. I so heard that in her voice. I so heard that in, like, the Luffy Krillin voice, and it freaked me the fuck out. Oh, my God. The thing about the single hair. Wow. Wow, Sean.
When I wrote that sentence, that's when I'm like, well, I have to put this one at number 1, because even I can't read that without laughing. So, like, this
Sean,
came up because I've been rewatching original Dragon Ball. So, like, literally when you did ask me for this top 10, that was like a day after I had just watched through that part of the original Dragon Ball where Krillin and Chaozu fight. And it was like, this is the first one I came up with was Krillin and Chaozu.
You madman. You are wasted as a high school teacher, Sean. Clearly, your destiny is to be one of those self-published erotica authors on Amazon, where you write fanfic and then file the serial numbers off and do a 50 Shades of Grey.
Yes, I do need to write the whole Krillin Chaozu fanfic and then, just make it, royalty-free.
50 kinds of bald.
Yes, royalty-free martial artist characters,
Yes. Sean, this is only our 6th episode, and I feel like you have set an impossibly high bar.
Yes. Well, I did it because I started doing it and it just was too much fun to stop. So I'm gonna just run through my top 10 again, and then I'll give you, Jonathan, your list to do for next month. So my number 10 most unusual ship was Aozaki Toko from Garden of Sinners and Archer / Emiyashiro's heroic spirit form from Fate's Day Night. My number 9 was Nana-chan Sensei from Love Chunibyo and Other Delusions, and Sao-chan Sensei from K-On! My number 8 was Elizabeth from Persona 3 and Amamiya Ren / the protagonist from Persona 5. My number 7 was Violet Evergarden from Violet Evergarden-esque Kobayashi-san from Maid Dragon. My number 6 was Ash's mom and Jessie from Pokemon. My number 5 was Asuka Senpai from Sound Euphonium and Bochi from Bochi the Rock. My number 4 was Nagato Yuki and the Computer Science Club president from The Melancholy of Suzumiya Haruhi. My number 3 was Jigen and Zenigata from Lupin the Third. My number 2 was Bright Noah and Cameron Bloom from the Mobile Suit Gundam franchise. And my number 1 most unusual or unexpected anime ship is Kuririn and Chaozu from Dragon Ball.
I've never been happier to have a podcast in my life.
All right. So, Jonathan, let me give you your top 10 for next month.
Okay.
So for the March list, I was looking at what were some things that we could do and realized there's a couple things coming up. So we've got our next season of Japanimation Station coming up, which is going to start with us doing 2 episodes on Dragon Ball GT. And also in March is when Dragon Ball Daima, the current airing Dragon Ball, will be done. So I thought, Jonathan, it would be fun if you would put together for me a list of the top 10 shows that should have a sequel or spin-off where the main characters are turned into children.
Okay. So a la GT or Daima, which are at opposite poles of the qualitative ladder, roughly. So, okay. So top 10 shows is a sequel where I can do this.
And to be clear, it's not like a prequel when they were kids or anything. It has to be like through some magic or divine intervention or whatever the fuck you want. All of or most of the main characters of the show are turned into children. What they do from that point, you can, if they have to go on a quest to turn back, if they just have to deal with that shit, I don't know. But I just want to know what other shows could be improved by this incredible plot device that 2 very different Dragon Ball shows have employed.
I think I know my number 1 right now, but I'll save it for March. This is, and it doesn't have to be animated. It can be any kind of show.
No, any
right?
show.
Yeah.
In fact, I would encourage you to go outside the realm of anime because when I was coming up with things off the top of my head, all the very funny ones were live action. So
okay, well, let's tune in next time to hear all about Breaking Bad babies.